Picking up, top of page 247. One did not's enough, said Atticus serenely. You never asked him to do odd jobs for you before? I mighta, conceded Mayella. There were several N-words around. So one, remember that it seemed like her dad was influencing some of her answers, and now it seems like her answers are changing, so does she seem like a super solid witness to us? Can you remember any other occasions? No. Alright, now to what happened. You said Tom Robinson was behind you in the room when you turned around, that right? Yes. You said he got you on the neck cussing and saying dirt. Is that right? That's right. Atticus's memory had suddenly become accurate. You said, he caught me and choked me and took advantage of me. Is that right? That's what I said. So I think it matters that Atticus suddenly seems like he remembers everything. Clearly he is building to something. Do you remember him beating you about the face? The witness hesitated. You seemed sure enough that he choked you. All this time you were fighting back. Remember, you kicked and hollered as loud as you could. Do you remember him beating you about the face? Mayla was silent. She seemed to be trying to get something clear to herself. I thought for a moment she was going to do Mr. Hectate's and my trick of pretending there was a person in front of us. She glanced at Mr. Gilmer. It's an easy question, Miss Mayla, so I'll ask again, or try again. Do you remember him beating you about the face? Atticus's voice had lost its comfortableness. He was speaking in his airy, detached, professional voice. Do you remember him beating you about the face? No. I don't recollect if he hit me. I mean, yes, I do. He hit me. Was your last sentence your answer? Huh? Yeah, yes, he hit me. I just don't remember. I just don't remember. It all happened so quick. Judge Taylor looked sternly at Mayella. Don't you cry, young woman, he began, but Atticus said, let her cry if she wants to, Judge. We've got all the time in the world. Mayella sniffed wrathfully and looked at Atticus. I'll answer any question you got. Get me up here and mock me, will you? I'll answer any question you got. That's fine, said Atticus. There's only a few more. Miss Mayella, not to be tedious, you've testified that the defendant hit you, grabbed you around the neck, choked you, and took advantage of you. I want you to be sure you have the right man. Will you identify the man who raped you? I will. That's him right yonder. Atticus said to the defendant, Tom, stand up. Let Miss Mayella have a good long look at you. Is this the man, Miss Mayella? Tom Robinson's powerful shoulders rippled under his thin shirt. He rose to his feet and stood with his right hand on the back of his chair. He looked oddly off balance, but it was not from the way he was standing. His left arm was fully 12 inches shorter than his right, and hung dead at his side. It ended in a small, shriveled hand, and from as far away as the balcony I could see that it was no use to him. And I hope that there are audible gasps in the classroom right now, because, let us remember, the person who beat Mayella Ewell did it with their left hand. They held her down with their right hand and beat her with their left. Tom Robinson does not have a left hand. It is literally impossible that he was the one who beat Mayella Ewell. Scout, breathed Jem. Scout, look, Reverend, he's crippled. Reverend Sykes leaned across me and whispered to Jem, he got it caught in a cotton gin, caught it in Mr. Dolphus Raymond's cotton gin when he was a boy. Liked blood to death, tore all the muscles loose from his bones. Atticus said, is this the man who raped you? Most certainly is. Atticus's next question was one word long. How? Mayella was raging. I don't know how he done it, but he done it. It all happened so fast Now let's consider this calmly, began Atticus, but Mr. Gilmer interrupted with an objection. He was not irrelevant or immaterial, but Atticus was browbeating the witness. Judge Taylor laughed outright. Oh, sit down, Horace. He's doing nothing of the sort. If anything, the witness is browbeating Atticus. Judge Taylor was the only person in the courtroom who laughed. Even the babies were still, and I suddenly wondered if they had been smothered at their mother's breasts. Now, said Atticus, Miss Mayall, you've testified that the defendant choked you and beat you. You didn't say that he sneaked up behind you and knocked you cold, but you turned around and there he was. Atticus was back behind his table, and he emphasized his words by tapping his knuckles on it. Do you wish to reconsider any of your testimony? You want me to say something that didn't happen? Which just might be the most ironic line of the entire book. You want me to say something that didn't happen. It seems like this entire story didn't happen. No, ma'am. I want you to say something that did happen. Tell us once more, please. What happened? He's giving her a chance. I told you what happened. You testified that he turned around and there he was. He choked you then? Yes. Then he released your throat and hit you? I said he did. He blocked your left eye with his right fist? I ducked and it glanced. That's what it did. I ducked and it glanced off. Mayella had finally seen the light. So Mayella didn't even realize where Atticus was building to, right? Clearly, she had not even thought through the fact that Tom Robinson didn't have a left hand. So clearly, when she or whoever was coming up with this story that there's no way it's true, didn't even think about this fact. Is it a good lie? I don't think it's a good lie. You're becoming suddenly clear on this point. A while ago, you couldn't remember too well, could you? I said he hit me. All right. He choked you, he hit you, and then he raped you, that right? He most certainly is. You're a strong girl. What were you doing all this time, just standing there? I told you, I hollered and kicked and fought. Atticus reached up and took off his glasses, turned his good right eye to the witness, and rained questions on her. Judge Taylor said, "One question at a time, Atticus. Give the witness a chance to answer." All right. Why didn't you run? I tried. Tried to? What kept you from it? He slung me down. That's what he did. He slung me down, got on top of me. You were screaming all this time? I certainly was. Then why didn't the other children hear you? Where were they? At the dump? Where were they? No answer. Why didn't your screams make them come running? The dump's closer in the woods, isn't it? No answer. Or didn't you scream until you saw your father in the window? You didn't think to scream until then, did you? What is Atticus implying here? You didn't think to scream until then. Maybe what was happening inside of that house is not what we think was happening inside of that house. No answer. Did you scream first at your father instead of at Tom Robinson? Was that it? No answer. Who beat you up? Tom Robinson or your father? No answer. What did your father see in that window? The crime of rape or the best defense to it? Why don't you tell the truth, child? Didn't Bob Ewell beat you up? When Atticus turned away from Mayella, he looked like his stomach hurt. But Mayella's face was a mixture of terror and fury. Atticus sat wearily and polished his glasses with his handkerchief. So 2 things. What do you think the best defense to rape is? Think about what might have been happening inside of that house that was not actually rape, because certainly it was not rape. And 2, I think it says something huge about Atticus, a little above halfway on page 251, that his stomach hurt. That he just asked Mayella all these questions and he feels terrible about it because of what he's doing to Mayella. I think it's still the right thing for Tom Robinson, and yet Atticus feels, even for a person like Mayella, who screams rape when it has not been rape. Atticus is just such an empathetic person. Suddenly, Mayella became articulate. I got something to say, she said. Atticus raised his head. Do you want to tell us what happened? But she did not hear the compassion in his invitation. Because again, referring to that line from earlier, from Monday, Tuesday, I don't know, whatever day it was, people hear what they want to hear, right? Atticus said at the beginning of this trial, people hear what they want to hear. She did not hear compassion. She heard, even though that's what was there. I got something to say, and I ain't gonna say no more. That N-word yonder took me advantage of me, and if you fine fancy gentlemen don't want to do nothing about it, then you're all yellow stinking cowards, a lot of you. Your fancy airs don't come to nothing. Your Mammon and Miss Mayella don't come to nothing. Mr. Finch! And she burst into real tears. Her shoulders shook with angry sobs. She was as good as her word. She answered no more questions, even when Mr. Gilmore tried to get her back on the track. I guess if she hadn't been so poor and ignorant, Judge Taylor would have put her under the jail for contempt she had shown everybody in the courtroom. Somehow, Atticus had hit her hard in a way that was not clear to me, but it gave him no pleasure to do so. I think that's important for both of them. He hit her hard in a way that was not clear to Scout. Surprise is not clear to Scout. That's not the important part. The important part is, he made her feel insecure and angry about something. Ashamed about something. And he felt terrible about it. Mark that moment. Let's talk about it later. He sat with his head down and never saw anybody glare at anyone with the hatred Mayella showed when she left the stand and walked by Atticus's table. When Mr. Gilmore told Judge Taylor that the state rested, Judge Taylor said, "It's time we all did. We'll take 10 minutes." Atticus and Mr. Gilmore met in the front of the bench and whispered when they left the courtroom by a door behind the witness stand, which was a signal for all of us to stretch. I discovered that I'd been sitting on the edge of a long bench and I was somewhat numb. Jem got up and yawned. Dill did likewise, and Reverend Sykes wiped his face on his hat. The temperature was an easy 90, he said. Mr. Braxton Underwood, who had been sitting quietly in a chair reserved for the press, soaked up testimony with his sponge of a brain, allowed his bitter eyes to rove over the colored balcony, and they met mine. He gave a snort and looked away. "Jem," I said, "Mr. Underwood's seen us." Quick reminder, Mr. Underwood is the one who, he's the newspaper editor. He lives above the newspaper, and he's the one who, like, had a shotgun and was maybe gonna protect Atticus that night that all those men came onto the jail. "Jem," I said, "Mr. Underwood's seen us." "That's okay. He won't tell Atticus. He'll just put us on the social side of the Tribune." That's like Jem trying to make a joke. Jem turned back to Dill, explaining, I suppose, the finer points of the trial to him, but I wondered what they were. Surprise! Scout has no idea what's going on. There had been no lengthy debates between Atticus and Mr. Gilmore on any points. Mr. Gilmore seemed to be prosecuting almost reluctantly. I'd like to talk about that moment later. We're going to keep talking about courage, or what makes you a good person, or what makes you a fine folk, and or what makes you an idiot, or whatever, however we want to talk about it. But I want you to mark that moment on bottom of 252. Mr. Gilmore seemed to be prosecuting almost reluctantly. Why might that be? Witnesses had been led by the nose as asses are, with few objections. But Atticus had once told us that in Judge Taylor's court, any lawyer who was a strict constructionist on evidence usually wound up receiving strict instructions from the bench. He distilled this for me to mean that Judge Taylor might look lazy and operate in his sleep, but he was seldom reversed, and that was the proof of the pudding. Atticus said he was a good judge. Interesting. Atticus thinks Judge Taylor, again, this is the judge who, like, assigned Atticus this case. Atticus thinks Judge Taylor, who appears lazy and like he's not paying attention, is a good judge. Presently, Judge Taylor returned and climbed into a swivel chair. He took a cigar from his vest pocket and examined it thoughtfully. I punched Dill. Again, and again, and again, and again. That doesn't say again and again. That's just me saying, haha. That's okay, whatever. That's not a funny joke. Having passed the judge's inspection, the cigar suffered a vicious bite. "We come down sometimes to watch him," I explained. "It's going to take in the rest of the afternoon now. You'll watch." Unaware of public scrutiny from above, Judge Taylor disposed of the severed end by propelling it expertly to his lips and saying, "Fuck." He hit a spittoon so squarely we could hear it slosh. "Bet he was hell with a spitball," murmured Dill. As a rule, a recess meant a general exodus, but today people weren't moving. Even the idlers who had failed to shame younger men from their seats had remained standing along the walls. Guess Mr. Hecate had reserved the county toilet for court officials. Atticus and Mr. Gilmore returned, and Judge Taylor looked at his watch. "It's getting on to 4, he said, which is intriguing, as the courthouse clock must have struck the hour at least twice. I had not heard it or felt its vibrations. "How about we try to wind up this afternoon?" asked Judge Taylor. "How about it, Atticus?" "Think we can," said Atticus. "How many witnesses you got?" "One." "Well, call him." And that is where we're going to stop reading. I hope that you got a couple of sticky notes throughout there. I think there were hopefully a couple moments I highlighted, and even some that I didn't, that I hope that we can talk about sometime. So we'll come back to that next week. I'm not going to read 19 to you. That'll be your homework for the weekend. It's not super long. I do want you to sticky note a lot of things. I have, let me count, like 19 moments that I sticky noted or like wrote in chapter 19. So there's some things there for you to observe. You can work on that as soon as you're done with the era envelope thing, or the era thing in Google Classroom, which you should see instructions about on Moodle. Thank you. Email me with questions.